Hi everyone. So I'm here making another video. Uh, Actually it's pretty late now as usual, but I wanted to make a video actually about spiritual narcissism again and the damages it can cause, especially because I want to actually talk a little bit about this because just recently I found that there's this thing called religious trauma syndrome. Okay, religious trauma syndrome was a term that was coined by Dr. Marlene Winell, Winnell. She used that to actually describe the phenomenon when someone is actually in a not necessarily just a cult group, but potentially a religious institution or church or whatever that exercises high control and abuse. Yes, and abuse and manipulation. The high control and manipulation and abuse that is exercised by the church or the religious organization causes immense harm, and the harm that is uh, exerted upon the attending member or the cult member who subsequently leaves or decides to leave is very similar to PTSD or CPTSD in terms of the symptoms. So I wanted to actually talk about this in terms of like the spiritual narcissism. Hillsong Church, yeah, Hillsong Church, not just in Australia but around the world, and it's similar affiliated churches such as down here in Singapore. We have City Harvest Church and other mega churches which actually operate on a similar model to Hillsong, and I mean some of these churches have actually are very ironically, and I mean without not ironically, but without even any real surprise, lapse into similar problems of fraud financially, or even as I heard potentially possibly some misdemeanor with regards to the way members are treated. And I want to actually talk about that, and in terms of the damage done, and why we can probably link this to spiritual narcissism in terms of the techniques they use. And I also link that to the idea, this problem which I call the mega syndrome. Mega as in mega church, but mega could refer not just to mega churches but to megalomaniac. Okay, why do I think, I'm not saying that I'm the expert here because I just started reading about this, but from my personal experience I believe that I can also give my possible take on this because I was actually a member of a particular mega church. Yes, a mega church. I won't name the church, but I'm not so sure now what is teaching. But back in those days, it was I think around 1997 till 2001 or 2002. During those 4 or 5 years when I was actually a member, attending member, yes, of that particular charismatic Baptist church. Yeah, it's a real contradiction in itself, like a charismatic Baptist church, um, which practiced different things that were similar to, the signs and wonders movement and the prosperity gospel and things like that. And we had a pastor, I mean the head pastor, senior pastor, who was doing things like performing a so-called magic show. Magic, yes, magic, being the sleight of hand, all about deception, not deception, but tricking, illusion, and using, allegedly using that to actually evangelize or spread the gospel of the Christian message to other people. I mean, back then I didn't know any better, so and then of course after that I left. My friend asked me, what I mean you left that and then you went to another church, which was the exact opposite. The church that I went to was like a Calvinist uh, Bible Presbyterian church, which believed that God only loves the saved, and that He has already decided beforehand that you know uh, um, who's going to go to hell and who's going to be in heaven. That kind of I mean, it's like they're both different ends of the same short stick, and these two ends of the same short stick is the short stick of cultic behavior. Okay, I must admit that from my own point, it gave me severe religious trauma syndrome, and why do I say that this is very akin to narcissistic abuse? And it's very similar because the thing is, in both churches, whether it's a charismatic church I was in or the Calvinist so-called Bible believing Reformed church, they both have similar fruits in some ways. The similar fruit is the fruit of arrogance. Okay, what do I mean by the arrogance or narcissism? It's very simple. If you find that there's something that they were doing that doesn't seem to match up, it can, I mean, it need not just be in the Bible, but it just doesn't seem to match up. And then, or if you find that one of the ways in which they explain something in that Bible verse doesn't seem to actually convince you, and you ask them, they will start trying to weasel their way, go around in circles, and then say, oh, this is because this was done in this tradition. Yeah, but I'm not talking about this tradition. This is not the thing. If you are saying that you don't believe in traditions, but this catechism says something which is contradictory, and then they will be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Then the whole thing they go back to was this: I'm the one in authority. I know better than you. Shut up. They don't. Of course, they don't tell you that you shut up, but they say it's in the Bible. Yeah, but the Bible here says this part differently. And the thing is, there's no room for agreement to disagree. Yeah, it's like when you know that there is no room for disagreement or just having your own opinion, and it's like basically just leave brace at the doorstep of the church or the building or whatever, you realize, oh, this is probably very close to spiritual narcissism. And I recall that I was cut down quite a lot in both situations. It didn't seem to work very well, and I mean, right now I think I'm very thankful, because I mean, it's a kind of blessing in disguise. As much as I want to go back to church, I have to work on Sundays, and so sometimes actually I don't really get bugged by people. I mean, except for occasionally I have one or two friends, people that I know in the past who actually converted to become members of some like charismatic or mega church. They'll tell me to go and visit their groups, but it's like I'm not going there for the kind of company and whatever, and it's not the kind of thing I really want. So I just kind of made it clear to one of them actually. I just told her I'm converting to Eastern Orthodoxy, as in Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and yeah, I'm actually contemplating that path. And I'm not being hesitant about it, because I know I've been doing that, contemplating for years, and until I really am convinced that I'm not in any kind of like a situation, I rather not in this kind of current state, until I feel comfortable enough to decide where I really want to be. But to go back to the whole thing about spiritual narcissist, Hillsong Church and the likes of their affiliated churches, and the mega problem, mega as in also megalomaniac. I'll actually go back to one thing about the problem of what Hillsong Church actually teaches us about spiritual narcissists. I want to actually preface this with the the statement, I'm not diagnosing anyone, although quite a few cases have surfaced with regards to Hillsong Church. We have quite a few. We had the case of the founder's father, Frank Houston, who was definitely a pedophile, yeah, and a rapist, a child rapist, yeah. I don't want to say that, but yeah, it was actually his crime, and because of that, and Brian Houston, his son, who was the founder of Hillsong, what we know as Hillsong now, cover up his crimes, and in the process of covering up the crimes, which is what he's currently being prosecuted for. He claimed that actually he had actually removed his father from the position in 1999, but further investigations and internal investigations, everything, and the findings minutes of the Assemblies of God meeting, the meetings have revealed that actually the board of elders, which actually fired Frank Houston, the father, had actually they were just paying lip service. They wanted to actually fire him for the time being, and then later on, subsequently, when the matter is being reinstated, when the matter is being like swept under the rug and no one talks anymore about it, they would actually reinstate him and put him back in a position to teach again. So you get a degree of cover-ups, and I've actually saw a bit of that. Yeah, it's a 4 hour long interrogation. I didn't watch all of it. Just look at the beginning, and I saw some of the the transcripts and on written words. And it seems that one of the excuses that Brian Houston also gave alongside this whole thing of having done the dismissal of his father and removal from office was that he claimed that he did not pay hush hush money to one of the victims, whom we now know is actually Brad Sengstock, Sengstock. Yeah, it's funny because you know that the whole thing about a lot of this abuse victims and rape and molestation victims is that they are living with a whole life of trauma. I mean, Brad Sengstock was actually literally molested and raped from the age of 7 till 12 years old. And when the thing was being revealed to his mother, she said, "Oh, you're not supposed to actually let this get out because it will actually hurt the church." You get what I mean? That the whole sense of trying to put it under wraps. And later, when Brian Houston actually gave him the money, which was about 12,000 Aussie dollars, 12,000 Aussie dollars, which was hush money to get him to keep quiet. There was no apology. Yeah, according to Brad Sengstock, he in fact claimed the one thing that Brad Sengstock had said was that it's Brian Houston actually claimed it's actually the money we're paying for you to keep quiet. This is what you have to do because it's your fault. You were the one who actually seduced and led my father to do this. Okay, so this is one aspect of it. And on top of this covering up, okay, we know that actually Brian Houston himself has been actually fired, yes, by his committee in the church over issues like money, the mismanagement of money laundering, and yeah, money was used for very exclusively expensive and luxurious pursuits, which seem to be almost bordering. It's not bordering. It's definitely on the scale of how the Kardashians would spend their money, like really extravagantly on things like invitation of guest speakers, flying them on private jets, and expensive gifts, holidays for themselves in the middle of the pandemic back in 2020, and yes, away from Australia when all the country was being placed in a lockdown. Yeah, and it was pretty disgusting. And how did they manage to do it? It was because of high connections to people in politics. As we know, we know that someone, the prior prime minister, was actually also a member of that church, and Hillsong Church. And on top of that, okay, there are some other issues, and not just that. I was talking in my prior video about the female members or female students in Hillsong College who were being subject to sexual harassment, molestation, and impropriety on the part of male staff and pastors. Okay, that one is something else. And but the main thing that I think that was something like an icing. Yeah, it's not really an icing on the cake. It was another issue was that whole thing about Carl Lenz, this particular pastor figure who did not really behave very much like what you would expect of a typical pastor. He has no per se real gravity per se. He was known to really be very hippie because he had tattoos, a lot of tattoos, and I mean, if you're a pastor, you should at least be dressed appropriately or whatever. But he was always dressed up in very hippie, expensive luxury designer wear, and he was going in and out with all these different in the company of all these Hollywood stars, including the Kylie Jenner, Selena Gomez, but most importantly, the most famous one being Justin Bieber, who has now dissociated himself from that church. And they found that Carl Lenz was actually having an affair back during 2020, yeah, during the time of the pandemic with this fashion designer, Ranin Karim, yeah, who was that was in the New York branch of Hillsong, and yeah, that whole thing. Okay, I'm not trying to say like give a diagnosis, but if you were to look at the way that these people behave, okay, I find that the techniques of accounting for their behavior, or at least trying to deflect and do all these things, the way of deflection and projecting their problems onto other people, blaming other people, reminds me exactly of the narcissistic technique. There's a fivefold technique called DARVO, DARVO. Okay, what do I mean by DARVO? DARVO, okay, deny, A, A, accuse, okay, R, reverse, okay, reverse. What do they reverse? Which brings us back to V and O. V, victim, they reverse the victim. And O, offender, okay, which is themselves. So now the victim becomes the offender. They, the offender, become the victim. So there are certain techniques which are used. I feel that actually Brian Houston and also Carl Lentz very famously have demonstrated it in the way they behave. Okay, why do I say that? Okay, Brian Houston, in his numerous meetings with his church members, okay, he has actually claimed this. He said, "Oh, there were things outside of this thing that is actually, causing some form of distress to us. And he solicits prayers for church members to actually help him tie over it." Okay, I'm not going to speculate, how guilty or whatever, but I mean, so far as it appears, a lot of the evidence is actually pointing against him. I do not know how the verdict will turn out, because the trial just, I mean, we're still in the middle of that trial and everything. And the as we keep going on, from last year until now, I think more and more evidence is surfacing, actually not just against him but against the whole church itself, to the point that even people outside have speculated that this is the end of Hillsong as we know it. And out of like the 16 churches they have in the USA, at least 9 of them have basically closed down. The church in itself in Australia is making losses, yeah, as a business corporation. Which is another thing. I mean, which decent church is actually marketing itself like a business, trying to make money off members who are giving to it non-stop, and then while giving to them non-stop, they work their members who are volunteers like slave labor. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, but the thing about DARVO, okay, Brian Houston was actually in denial. He kept on giving certain stories saying that, he felt that his father's crime should not be divulged to the public, to the police, and that therefore yeah, he said this kind of things. And then he said that, I'm glad that this 36-year-old man has come forth right now, after the the whatever, and back then, that I didn't want to actually get it to the police. So he said that, he has all these years to do it immediately after the thing. Why he didn't do it now? So he's the thing is, there's DARVO at work in denying it, claiming that the world is against us. And then after he accuses the victim. What does he accuse? He attacks the victim by claiming that if they were really being raped and molested by his father, they should have done it back then. Okay, this is a very common gaslighting technique, because people, like people who actually, we know that people who get raped or molested, there's a lot of shame. They refuse to actually talk about it. And it's not just even rape and molestation, it's even abuse itself. abuse victims don't want to talk about it because there's a lot of shame. What's the shame attached to it? The stigma is that, oh, you're a guy, or you're a girl, or you're an adult. I mean, or whatever, or even just a kid. Can't you just walk away? You know, the typical thing you keep on hearing from society. Society gaslights victims by saying, oh, why can't you just walk away? But you have to remember that all these victims, the majority of them at least were young boys. They have no ability to actually fight someone like Frank Houston, was actually a grown adult, and they're probably being, like, not antagonized. They were being like threatened. They could be threatened. I mean, you have to remember, he was using his position of power to actually get his victims. So that's one thing. And then on top of that, okay, other than Davo, okay, there's also reversal. The reversal of the victim and the offender position was very obvious in Brian Houston's rhetoric, according to Brad Senstock, because Brad Senstock, one of the victims, actually claimed that what Brian Houston said was, "It's your fault because you seduced my father. You actually led him to actually do this." So, isn't it what people say? Like, I mean, when like when a girl, or even not just a girl, but let's just a man, when he or she is subjected to SA. Yeah, I'm not going to say what it means, but we all probably can guess what SA means, or uh, some form of assault, whatever. The one thing is say, oh, you probably must be wearing something that kind of misled that led them to do that. Victim shaming, yeah, victim shaming, and saying that the victims are the offenders. I really hope that Brian Houston will actually be punished accordingly and justly by the law in Australia, and that hopefully this will be the judgment that God, and also not just God, but even the law, will bring upon that church, okay, and all its different branches, whatever. But so far, even if they always say, even if he gets off the hook, when the truth is being exposed, it sheds a lot of light on abusers and different things that they have done. The issue is then this: do people still keep on believing them and staying around in that church, or do they want to leave it? We'll see. And as far as I can actually recall, in the case of, like, down here in Singapore, actually we have this case of City Harvest Church. I mean, not surprisingly, it was actually also related to Hillsong. Not directly, but Hillsong actually claims that he has some unofficial or undisclosed network churches around the world. So and City Harvest Church is one of the few churches that I know actually it models itself after Hillsong in many ways, not just the worship, the very performative style of worship, and but I think the main thing with City Harvest Church was that the management style, not just the management style, but the leadership. Okay, it has a particular, it ran into a particular case back in years ago with his head pastor. He actually was found guilty by the law of this criminal breach of trust. Okay, why was it a criminal breach of trust? There were thousands and thousands of dollars, almost like amounting to millions, being taken from the church without telling them, and this amount of money was actually used to finance the senior pastor's wife's pop star career. Okay, and it was found that she was living a very luxurious life in LA next to celebrities like Leona Lewis and the like. And okay, the thing was that later on, the police, after there was some whistleblowers and whatever, and it became very suspicious, and the police was brought in, and the investigations yielded the discovery that there were some empty shell companies that they actually funneled some money into the extra money to actually into this shell companies before these companies will actually direct it back to the church. So it's like a kind of things that they all this kind of little magic or little manipulation of accounts to ghost accounts to get money back, to pay back the thing amount that they siphon off without consent. Or not, maybe with consent, but just without telling the church. And it just makes you wonder, what is it with all these mega churches and the pastors' use of like Davo because even that senior pastor used certain things such as claiming that Jesus actually apologized to him, and of course there will be members defending, say, oh, it was taken out of context. Yeah, but uh, God doesn't apologize to anyone. I mean, if you want to even think about that, that doesn't make sense to me, or to anyone. It didn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense still. The claim that then God was trying to use his so-called trial and tribulation under the law, under the investigation, to perform a great work in Singapore and mission, but right now, I mean, it's still probably one of the mega churches here in Singapore, but there have been members from that church leaving for elsewhere. And I know one friend of mine, the friend who just passed away last year or the year before last. She was actually a member for a while, but she left again because yeah, she couldn't take the thing when they started asking her, like, and other members, to sell the CDs, the music CDs of the pastor's wife, okay, just to promote her pop star career, okay. So you know what is it with this whole thing? There were claims of this. Okay, Carl Lentz was called a narcissist by ex-members, and I was thinking, if we don't just call, let's not just stick around at calling Carl Lentz the narcissist according to the members, but what if the true, the head honcho, who is actually Brian Houston, and maybe not just Brian Houston himself, but even the leadership, which now is being replaced by someone, I think Phil Dooley, the rest and whatever, who has taken over him. What if not just Carl Lentz, but the head honcho, the new head honcho and the old head honcho, what if they are all narcissists? That makes them wolves in sheep's clothing, okay? So if anyone has any kind of logic, any reason, or even sense of, you don't even say it's discernment, I mean, according to Christian terms, we say discernment, but just logic itself, even if you're not a Christian believer, or whatever, wouldn't you want to just run away from such people? And there's a lot of religious traumas that's being visited, because I remember that from my own position when I was attending charismatic church, mega church, many years ago, in my, I think my late, my mid, not my late, mid 20s, yeah, mid and early 20s, which is like more than 20 years ago. I remember the kind of shock I had when someone telling you that he or she is anointed to the point that he's an apostle, so he can't be questioned. And yeah, he can't be questioned because he is like a prophet. I was like, my eyes were really incredulous, and was thinking, how do you even have the proof that you are a prophet? Yeah, it brings us back to the whole thing I was talking about, the mega problem, the megalomaniac problem deep inside the mind. All of them have this syndrome that, I am anointed, I am therefore beyond blame. No matter what you say, no matter what evidence you have, they will still deny it. They will say, oh, they have a reason for everything, and they give another account of whole tail. They'll flip, like double is R, reverse. Okay, this is also called flipping the script. Okay, flipping a script, saying now it's not their fault, it's your fault. You did this, you're accusing me, you're saying this, I didn't do that. Okay, narcissists do that like a lot. So even if they are spiritual narcissists or whatever, it's not much different from other kinds of narcissism. So yeah, so far I'm still waiting to hear what's going to happen in the case of Hillsong Church. And I'm very honestly very disgusted by it, because I have a friend who still attends it. I think she still attends it actually, although she married a Macedonian Orthodox. Her husband is actually Australian, and she married someone who's actually Macedonian, born and raised in the Macedonian Orthodox Church, but doesn't really practice it as much anymore. At least as an Australian, in Australian secular Australian society. But that friend of mine, I mean, I just really hope that she can start seeing the deception that's going on, and there's a lot of manipulation going on in all these kind of churches. So I'm not gonna like speculate, oh, they are cults and whatever, maybe, but they do have very strong characteristics which are akin to high control groups, and we have reason to beware and to dissociate ourselves from them. Okay. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm actually going to go off and have my sleep. So, but anyway, I hope everyone has a good day.